Welcome back to our study called More Than You Can Think. We're looking at Genesis chapter 17, verses 23 through 27 today. And this part I've called Trust and Obey. Again, another song. And you'll see in a minute why I called it this. But first of all, these couple verses here, we're going to see belief displayed by action. It's a belief that you have, and it's displayed, the fact that you have this belief is displayed by your actions. Now, as mind-blowing as the promise was, Abraham was called to belief displayed by action. That's what he was called to do. If he did believe in God, then it would be shown by his obedience in circumcising the men of his household. That's exactly what we see. Abraham acts immediately and circumcises his whole family, regardless of their ethnicity or their background. He gathers his whole household together, including Ishmael. They all come together to receive the mark of the covenant promises. As James, in the book of James, tells us, that Abraham's faith was active along with his works. So he had faith, he also had works too. Some people get confused about that because, well, wait a minute, is James talking about that works saves you? No, the works don't save you. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that a real faith, a true faith, a justified faith, a saving faith is displayed by works. That's what happens. If you have that kind of faith, if you have a faith that is a saving faith, if you have a real faith and trust in God, then that will show in your life. It'll change you. You can't say I have faith in a chair. Well, I have faith in this chair, but you never sit in it. Do you really have faith in that chair? Well, if you're afraid to sit in it, you don't ever do that, then really no. The way you show that you have faith in that chair to hold you, to support you when you sit in it, is to sit in it. Can't just say you do it and then be afraid to do it, because then you're not really trusting it. You have to trust it, you have to put your butt in the chair. Same thing with God. If you're going to trust God, you're going to follow God. God said, I give you these promises, and you're like, oh, that's nice. Let me try to figure these things out on my own then. That's not putting your trust in Him. You're like, well, God says, well, I've saved you. And then you're like, well, let me try to save myself. Well, obviously you don't believe and trust that He saved you, right? So, there you go. All right. So there's faith accompanied by works. What He says, I will do. That's what Abraham said. There's a guy named John Sammis. He wrote the hymn, Trust and Obey. And whether he intended or not, the words really fit nicely with Abraham's story here. Because here's what he said, when we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He sheds on our way. As Abraham walked before the Lord, just as God said at the beginning of chapter 17, walk before me and be blameless. As Abraham did that, God kept shining His glory upon Abraham's path. He kept seeing more and more of God's glory. Kept seeing more and more of this promise, this glorious promise that He's made, this covenant that God has made with him. He got to see more and more. The glory just kept shining on his path. Abraham knew that in fellowship sweet, we will sit at his feet or we'll walk by his side in the way. And that's what Abraham was doing. He was sitting at the feet of God, learning from God, hearing the promises. He's actually fallen on his face before God. So he's actually learning it. He's not sitting at His feet. He's bowing down at His feet. But then he's also, in the next chapter, he'll be walking along with God. He'll walk out to the edge of the valley overlooking Sodom and Gomorrah, and where God will share His plan with him. He'll show what He's going to do. Amazing. There's that fellowship suite there. He's fellowship. And then Abraham has the opportunity to intercede for those people and talk to those people. So that's what God does for him. It's amazing. And you know what Abraham also said, and he could have said this too. He could have sang this part of the song, where he says, what He says I will do, where He sends I will go. What He says I will do, where He sends I will go. And that's exactly what Abraham had in his heart. That's what Abraham did. When Abraham told him to circumcise everyone, immediately it says, boom, he's out there circumcising everyone. What He says I will do. Where He sends, I will go. So in the next part, in chapter 18, we'll see where God draws Abraham into a conversation about mercy, and then really prompts Abraham to ask for mercy, ask for God what He already says He will be and what He will do. So there's that kind of, where he sends, I will go. Or if he wants me to talk about mercy, I'll talk about mercy. So Abraham finally came to the conclusion that never fear, only trust and obey. That's what Abraham finally came to, and he'll struggle with that over the years. His son Isaac will struggle, and Jacob will struggle, and all of his children, including those of us who have faith in Christ, who are Abraham's children, we struggle with that. Never fear, it says. Only trust and obey. That's not an easy thing to do always, but it's what we've been called to do. It's how Abraham responded. That should be our heart too, is to never fear, only trust and obey.